get the one thing. Give you the attachment to everything, so you don't have to go back to it.
I can speak to
7 o'clock, and all is well. I understand we've got a few technical issues to cope with tonight, whereby we're not being broadcast live, but the whole meeting will be recorded and played back, or there may be a change of. Yep.
So Robbins is just arrived.
Okay, so because of that small change, can I just make sure that everybody is aware of the difference in the recording and live broadcast, and everybody's quite happy with that, unless there's anybody who says otherwise. No, okay, no, we're happy with that.
We're just doing the first vote.
Okay, we're ready for that one. Oh, okay. Okay. So, I'd just like to welcome everybody to it's the 1st of February. Yep, so it's a new month, a new year for the Prosperity Scrutiny Committee. And as far as I'm aware, we're not expecting any fire alarms tonight. For practice, but if we do have some, then obviously there is a procedure for going out to the car park where you will be led to. Apart from that, could I entertain any apologies for absence or changes?
Yes, we have apologies for absence from Councillor Brown, with Councillor Robbins attending.
Okay, thank you. And any declarations of interest? No. Okay. We at the last committee meeting, which was held on the 2nd of November. Minutes are available. Has everybody seen the minutes? Yeah. And is everybody in agreement for accepting those as a true account of what took place at that meeting? Yeah, all those four? Good. Against? Abstain? No. 2 abstains. Okay. We move on to item 4 on the agenda, which is something which we have done before, and it's a review of the workings, really, of the Prosperity Committee. And it's an opportunity, again, to look at what has been put in place so far and to comment on that in accordance with the pages 13 to 48. Also I think we just need to discuss if anything comes up on that one. So I think we have a small presentation from Tomasz.
Well, there's a verbal, Chair.
That's all we want, because I'm hoping that from what I've read from that, there's very few changes, and anything that has changed, we know why it's changed, and we know it will change again. So take it as read. So over to you for a brief overview.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you. Welcome, members. Nice to see you again. Sorry I've been away for a while. We've got a packed agenda today. Obviously, this is the first item. Colleagues within the forum also covering off the issues and options statement of consultation feedback, so you'll be able to sort of hear that. Plus, we'll be covering off some of the work programme and updates associated with that. There's been a few sort of items moved around on that, and I can explain. I don't intend to paraphrase every single item in relation to the report, because anything that's a green is, there's no significant change as highlighted by the chair. I'm just going to sort of quickly run through any exceptions. I'm happy to take any questions as we go through, or at the end, whichever suits you members thereof. Okay, if I can start off with the first item, seats. Really, just to sort of give you an update there, there's been a recruitment of a new managing director and business development manager. The timeline of that was interviews taking place just the other week, 22nd of January, and new appointments scheduled to sort of be brought in to provide additional capacity in relation to that. On the economic development timeline for the ED policy and strategy, we're still working on that. It's still an item that we're trying to progress, and that followed on from the previous LGA review. You may recall, whilst we have brought forward various vision and strategies for the borough and the town centre, it's sort of dependent upon these major forms of strategy being in place. But anyway, we've suggested the policy planning tool development commences in order to the approach to be considered. But there's been a lot of sub-activity, and the exceptions I would refer to the ED side are as follows. First of all, nothing to report on the advice store. On the skills show, no exceptions, but just to make you aware, there was a very successful show that ran in October 23. Planning for this the following year will commence in the late summer, but after that I suspect that this will be removed from reporting in future. It becomes BAU. Next item, the capacity development and build. Again, no significant exceptions here, but just to make you aware, there's a launch of the new Basildon Business Leaders Group, BBL, and which is planned for early March as well. The Good Employment Charter and working well, no exceptions on that. You may be aware there were two bids being prepared utilising UK SPF funding, both one for Billericay, one for Wickford, working with the town teams. Again, no exceptions, but there are reports coming up to Cabinet on the 8th, which members may be interested to see. And just to let you know, within those reports, it sets out the timeline and the key stages and details thereof. So it might just be of interest to you to have a look at that. Creative Industry Advisor, the procurement for that is currently included in the exercise for the CDF project. That's the one in the Basildon Town Centre on the former Robbins Cinema. Following on from the last board, there were delays in the procurement of the CDF, and officers have agreed to separate the two procurements so they don't get snared. The Economic Development team are preparing the revised procurement packs for the advisor, and therefore the new timeline will be confirmed in due course. We just need to get the contract awarded as soon as possible in order that we can get the spending of that fund in the 24-25 envelope. And that's why we wanted to split it so it wasn't snared with the other project. With regard to the Creative Tech Pre-Accelerator, again, no exceptions, but preparations are away for the next delivery programme. And similarly with the Creative Tech Partnership, there's a festival due to take place throughout February. Members may be interested in knowing on that. I can provide further information. It is being supported through SLT members and the Chief Exec as well. But just if you want any further details on that, I can provide that in due course, Chair. General Business Financial Package Advisor, again, no exceptions, but just really wanted to make you aware of utilising the data as performance measures to support wider delivery. And again, these are the sort of things that we're becoming more engaged with because the data is very supportive in terms of painting that picture that members were very keen to see when we last reported back in September, Chair, you may recall. Feasibility studies, no exception, but there are further two have been received and are scheduled for the appraisal panel between now and March 24. And I would just say that in effect, a number of work lines have been coincided with the Greater Essex and South Essex economic plans, which are in development. And I think it's just making you aware that how they're working with SEC overall. I will only touch on this lightly because Christine and colleagues will be sort of covering this in a little bit more detail, but on the local plan, there is effectively a report this evening, members, but I think the main thing to sort of also be aware of, there is still a red status overall. One of the matters that has recently been impacting is the letter of intervention received from the Secretary of State in December. Planning colleagues responded to that. We've also brought on board Planning Advisory Service, who are providing local plan project management and support to assist with that process. And as a result, the team are due to have further sessions with them, which have been taking place at the end of January. Officer Local Plan Project Team will be reconvened as a result to ensure we are responding to the interception and exploring options to accelerate the delivery timeframe. And again, these will all be reported in due course. If I move now on to the Basildon Town Centre Delivery Programme, there's a lot of sub-projects relating to this, Chair members. Effectively, it's a holistic delivery plan. There's still some outstanding pending approvals of the budget, you may recall, which is still being formulated, but essentially there's a commission of the review of the previous vision that was taken for the town centre and the delivery plan thereof. We'll be coming back and advising you of what that will include and how that will be taken forward in due course. But in terms of the current projects, the first one is the CDF, that's the former Robin Cinema. We had a meeting with ACE and members before Christmas regarding the rescoping of the project. Officers are awaiting confirmation from DCMS, and I think that may have been coming in recently, and there may be some movement on that programme and further lenience provided by DCMS to allow us to meet that revised timetable, but I'll come back and report on that when I've got further information. The reason being is because it takes us beyond the current spend deadline of March 26. So we wanted to make sure that we had the approval to inch that forward a little bit and still achieve the spend as required. And I think that's likely to be August 26, members. Project team has been reconvened in order to progress this, and the procurement element of trying to see if we can secure a new operator is underway. There may be some issues in regarding the commercial terms, but we'll be coming back and letting you know of that in due course. So there's a number of projects here that are in movement, and that's what I was just trying to highlight for you. Public realm strategy. You may recall we carried out an exercise in the town there with exterior and a special project team. It was agreed with the leader and portfolio holder through a brief at Christmas that we would allocate a certain amount of spend from the budget, around about £45,000. I'd also received some support from Essex County Council regarding the wayfinding improvements across the town centre, and effectively share with the public realm working group in order that the tender exercise can be brought forward, and this was initiated in January. On East Square, discussions still continue with the potential operator. We're still in commercial discussions regarding that, and the intention is to seek cabinet approval once those have been finalised. The likelihood is that we would hope to enter into a new lease by this month, but we'll come back and report that in due course. I think that's really all I can say regarding that one, members, as it is still commercially sensitive at this point in time. With regard to the post office, Plan application for the longer term proposals has been reviewed in order to take this into consideration, the requirements of the Building Safety Act. We're looking to submit an application by the end of February, and there has been discussions between the respective teams to make sure it's compliant with the pre-planning requirements. And both the lead and the portfolio holder have been sort of involved in that process prior to that. In the meantime, officers are exploring options for meanwhile uses, and there'll be a paper planned later on in the agenda to see what we can do to utilise UKSPF funding for that. There's some community provision being considered, which will form the basis and the starting point for any regeneration options for that site, because we'd like to involve the community as part of that exercise if we can. Moving on to the BTCM, proposals for the council are to take control of this if we are able to, subject to terms being satisfactory. Key information is still required from BTCM, and obviously that has not been as forthcoming as quickly as we'd hoped. There's initial legal feedback to BTCM which recommends their share should be transferred to the council once it's been agreed by their partners. And once that outstanding information is received, a detailed proposal will be prepared and planned for the Strategic Asset Board consideration. I've mentioned about the vision relating to Basildon Town Centre. With regard to the overall borough, delivery plans to implement the vision are outstanding, but this has been obviously limited by the budget and the ability to progress certain elements, but we will be also looking to bring forward that once the ED strategy, the local plan and the BTC delivery programme have been finalised. So there's a number of cogs in that wheel that essentially are needing to be put in place before we can bring that forward in a meaningful way. Good news though, on the Basildon Ambulance Hub, the development agreement was signed and the VET notice is in place until June 24. Officers will start to prepare both the planning application and the procurement documents during this period in order for them to be started once the VET notice ends. Obviously the costs for the design works are being finalised, and East, who are the main body that is being prepared for, have confirmed they will underwrite these costs through a support agreement which is being developed. But the good news is the development agreement has been signed. Wickford Market relocation, I know this has formed one of our hot topics when we were in Wickford in September last year. You may recall we managed to secure the Woodlands Road site and made sure that was appropriately prepared, and at least we now have that market operating from that location. Discussions are underway with the Town Council, who are looking to take over the responsibility of the market. A draft licence has been prepared, and the Town Council is seeking to review this ahead of a Cabinet report. It was originally scheduled for February, but those matters are still being discussed, so I think, members and Chair, that's likely to move further into March before a report is prepared. But we'll report back to you and give you an update when we're able to. With regard to Wickford main car park improvements, our responsibility remains clear in terms of the contribution to that project. It's only relating to the car park. You may recall there was a separate landowner and a separate negotiation and deal being construed by Heriot with a prospective retail operator. We're not a party to those commercial negotiations. We're only involved in the car park provision for that end scheme. So just trying to make those red lines clear, and obviously any other exploration would be on the planning side in due course. I'll just move you on to Linden Public Realm. tenders have been received from the procurement exercise, which included cost plans. This will take the project over the budget. Therefore, options to deliver within the existing council contract is being explored in order to keep the cost within that envelope. My understanding that has subsequently been achieved, and that those negotiations have enabled that cost envelope to be hitting target. So that I don't think there'll be an overrun on that, Chair and members. PITSI high-level capacity review and financial appraisal. The project's currently on hold, pending the delivery of the other project which has taken place in the town centre, the Community Diagnostic Centre, where the Trust are awaiting approval for NHS England in regards to the costed plans and the timeline in order for delivery to continue. There's also been a slight delay in relation to the planning application submission due to the need for a further 3 technical surveys to be completed. As you'll appreciate, members, this is always in looking back, and obviously things may have moved on a little bit further on that. When we're able to, we will advise in due course. If I can move you on to now the Basildon Town Centre lighting improvement proposal. All I would say is that costs have come in for that, and we are looking to incorporate that as part of the overall public realm arrangements for the town centre. In particular, if we are in a position to progress with the cinema operator, we would want then the lighting to mirror and be able to improve the area as well. So they're hand in hand. We'll come back with further details on that, but as far as I'm aware from the team, the costs that we've received on that are in line with our budget available. And I think as far as that element is concerned, that's probably it, because it formed a separate discussion within our Prosperity Board. I think similarly with the post office, and I think similarly with the local plan, which is a separate item, and then the Billericay and Wickford bids. So I think, in essence, Chair and members, that's the overview that I wanted to provide you with. I've got a little bit more detail on certain things if you wish, but I'll leave it open for you and members to ask any questions of me and the team.
Great, thank you very much.
I can find a quick update on this, the PITSI CDC. That's going to Planning Committee on the 7th of February. So that's actually with a recommendation from officers for approval.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Personally, I think that was, a good overview and touched on the most important points. But quite prepared to listen to any comments, because we are, as it states in the consideration, we're invited to scrutinise this position as it stands now and ask any questions related to that. So, do we have anything that has come from that presentation?
So yes, it's the whole report, Chair, so it's this stats as well.
Did you have... Oh, right, okay.
It's not so much a question as a comment, which I raised before. And I'd like to sort of put that in the context that Basildon, for very many years, was a leader, not a follower. And I'm quite concerned over the way that people's jobs are actually classified. When we talk about mid-skill occupations, low-skill occupations, and we actually look at the people that are involved in those, actually some of the lower-skilled, supposedly lower-skilled occupations actually require more training than some of the, say, administrative skills. And I'd like to think that in our reports, we look at things as saying lower paid, mid pay scale, that kind of thing. So we actually recognise that we're talking about pay here and not the actual skills that the people that work in those sectors hold, because the two do not compete. It's not the right word. Compute to me. You know, so having worked as a carer in the past, I know that my training was far more than I ever had for, say, working in the banking industry. But the pay was considerably different.
Okay, thank you for that. If you could just turn off your mic. Anybody else for comments? Yep. Mr. Jeffrey?
Thanks, Chairman. Just looking at page 38 where you're talking about Heriots, I'm just wondering how regularly has your department, Tamash, been in contact with Heriots to make sure that they're at least making some progress? Because at the public consultation that they held in the Netherden Centre, they said it was imminent within a few weeks, but obviously a few weeks has turned into a few months. I'm just wondering how regularly we've been in contact with them.
So there's two areas that they're in contact with us, one through a planning route in terms of their scheme proposals, which is separate, obviously, as any land ownership issues. So we separate those two elements. Regarding sort of land ownership, there hasn't been any further engagement with us of significance other than through our commercial agents, and really the door's been left open for them to approach us and present any proposal they wish. At the moment, I think they're still reviewing what options which they may be considering. At the end of the day, I think the main thing is, until we know what that is and what they're seeking, it's not really our position to interfere or progress anything further on that. Ultimately, I just need to point out that it's a private scheme, private proposal. The council doesn't own the land. The council isn't preparing the scheme. So really, we're really relying upon them to come to us. And then, with being a sort of public body, we need to be mindful that if they're seeking any sort of financial assistance, that would have to be considered very carefully in relation to the council's current position. And anything like that would have to be reported through the council, through cabinet anyway. So we're not taking the lead on this. It's up to them to push that proposal to us and for us to consider it.
Thanks, Tomas. The reason I brought that up is that the communication is a key point, and I know I've mentioned this before, but that, as you said about the scheme, that they may change their mind, but they said to Whitford it was just going to be a supermarket. Now it's got many stories of flats on top, and it's obviously, if they're not communicating with people, how would they know when it's coming? I mean, you know, sort of the relief is that Audi's been opened, but obviously I know that it's not for the council to necessarily do, but we should at least say our expectation is for our residents not to be messed around and used as some form of football, because that's, you know, in a sense what they're trying to do is hold Wickford to ransom, because they're sort of saying, well, the development may not have been totally viable, so therefore we're going to have it that you can see the Tilbury docks because we made a few maths mistakes. That's not really palatable, at least from the people I'd spoken to. It's if you've consulted the first time and then they're changing their mind, that's not, and that's one of the things I was hoping that the council would sort of, if they'd had any sense that that's through your team. And just another point, which may be picked up later on, is just on the local plan. We always see this mentioned, particularly in the overall status of red, which is page 30, keep saying advisory starting point and noting that any housing assessment will be subject to examination. I just think we keep having this banded around that it's a starting point but it's always more so a set objective as a minimum. And I think it's perhaps the wording is not clear either from government or to the inspectors on what actually is a starting point or a minimum. But that's just sort of a point I wanted to make on that one.
Okay, but I think we can cover that one in the next little phase. Have you got any further questions at the moment for what we covered? Yeah.
I'm not sure if we're able to deal with the detail, but I've got a question on page 41, and it's to do with the skills. It's the third, under the graph, it's the third paragraph. And I could see that it says in 2021, only 24% of Basildon's borough residents had an NVQ4. And in England, it was like 43%. So I just wonder what we're doing to bridge that gap. Is that something that we can address in this meeting?
Yes, certainly, member. The action plan that we are currently working to includes skill support. The seats is one example of that, where we're trying to grow that skill base, that knowledge base, which has got private industry support as well. The ED team are working in collaboration and have various interventions with the schools as well to try and encourage and develop those skill bases. And they are also, as indicated in the Q3 report, working and creating a new Basildon business group to make sure that interface with the respective schools, businesses and education providers are all in a sort of coordinated fashion. So I think, as I've outlined in the Q3 report, there's a whole range of initiatives that we are progressing across that front to hit that those action plan objectives in relation to the corporate plan as well. And those are just some examples that I've quoted there, Councillor, that we're doing to try and sort of improve that position.
Follow-up question. Chair, can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So if we're working towards that, is there a timeline for that? Do we have a timeline for that?
I don't think there's a specific timeline per se with some of these initiatives. There are certain areas that we're working in, and we've got funding where we do have a timeline to achieve that expenditure. But this is why I'm saying, and I mentioned earlier, one of the things that we need to have in place is that economic development strategy, which is the basis of our sort of Basildon growth plan. So that, coupled with the local plan, will then give us that information and the basis to take that forward. What I can do, though, Councillor, is I can sort of check with the team and see if there's any initiatives that we are implementing and give you some kind of a timeline based on that. But I don't have that information readily to hand, Chair. Happy to report that back with the member following this meeting.
It's, for me, it's a bit of a concern, only because if skills are low or there is a lack of qualifications, that means people won't have that money, dispensable
Yes.
money to them. And then if we're trying to lift everybody within the borough, especially Basildon compared to the rest of the country, I think it's important that we prioritise things
Sure.
like this to move residents to a level of prosperity, to be honest.
So, sorry, I do apologise. I kept my mic on there. I do apologise, members. Just give you a flavour. I mean, last year we had a career advisory event at the adjoining theatre. I attended that with colleagues, and there was a tremendous turnout with lots of prospective employers, lots of education providers as well. So quite a great hub of initiatives. It was quite fascinating to note the difference as well. Just as an observation, they had various talks taking place during the evening, and one was relating to university and the route associated there too, and how many prospective students would be interested in going down that route versus the skills development and apprenticeship route. From what I observed, there was 3 people in the university lecture, including myself, my daughter, and the presenter. That was it. And the reason being is one of the things that is quite striking is for anybody going in the university route, you're needing somewhere in the region of about £60,000 to cover your 3 years of university. However, the hall that I also went into, which covered the apprenticeship route, was packed with parents and prospective students, albeit it was only a 30-minute presentation. And the reason being is that prospective students going in that route can earn and learn simultaneously, and was of far greater interest to the audience. So those are the things that we've been mastering and focusing on our attention to develop that business group. The seats is a prime example where key leading private businesses, Ford as an example, in this borough are supporting and trying to drive up that skill set. So really it's the connection between the education providers through schools and colleges and universities working in tandem with the business community, and what we're trying to do is interface between those two and encourage those linkages. And that's why I said if I can establish any specific initiatives with the timelines, I'll come back to you on that.
I still have another question. Generally, when these kind of initiatives are taking place, most of the time it's to do with students who are leaving school. But I'm just thinking of the adult population as well. It would be good to see what we're doing to skill them up. And well, if we skill them up, we're hoping that we're skilling them up for maybe jobs in the local area, and if we can just have if we can monitor that to see progress over the years.
I mean, one of the initiatives that we have got, I'm sure you're aware, members, we've got the skill shop in the town centre, and we've got various providers who are based in there who do those things for both adult as well as new school leavers, and trying to make sure that those opportunities you're referring to, they're not forgotten about. They've actually given pathways to actually come back into the employment, because obviously the more people are able to do that, the greater benefits for them and greater benefits for the society as well.
Yes, obviously we've seen a lot about the regeneration of Billericay and Wickford. I'm still concerned that we're not putting something together regarding Langdon. I know that that we're looking, obviously we're waiting for the town centre, but that's still going to be some time off in the future. So, whereas we do have a number of economic hubs and trading estates that are offering sort of various types of jobs. And I just wonder what we're actually doing to actually enhance that, which will obviously bring employment and training to our residents, whether they be young or old, there.
A very good point, and hence why I wanted to check the initiatives and if there's any timelines. I haven't got anything specifically recorded in the Q3 report relating to Langdon, except the public realm work that we're doing and support that we're trying to encourage sanctuary with the town centre that you refer to. But on a specific business, I think it would be probably fairer to check with my ED team, and then come back and highlight if there's anything specific, just to give you some reassurance of what might be coming over on the horizon. It really keeps boiling down to the funding initiatives that we secure, and then securing sufficient interest from the business community. That's why the Billericay and the Wickford one have been successful to date, because there's been a growth in that interest through the town teams, who have then signalled, and even in Basildon, to be fair, have signalled where they want that money to be and what they want that money to be spent on. So on the one hand, it's following the money trail from government, and then securing the agreement from, you know, collective partners.
Obviously, you're talking about the town teams, so Billericay, Wickford, as you say, even the town centre here, and I'm assuming Pitsea as well. I don't know if Pitsea are the poor relations also, but we can't wait for 2025 to 2026 for the town centre to be built before we start to engage. Unless we're engaging with those Basildon businesses, then they're not going to get involved, and therefore the bids, etc., can't be put in, so the money can't come to Langdon. So I'm just very mindful of the fact that we need to be doing a lot more in Langdon, generally.
Can I just say, I think we're probably straying a little bit off of the general plan here to discuss this, and in fact it leads very nicely into the next section, which is going to be the local plan. But you're probably aware that the item we just looked at on the agenda, similar to the local plan one, is mainly for discussion purposes on the content of what we have before us. And something which I wanted to really establish with the members was how we address this next topic, because of its importance. And it produces quite a bit of paperwork, which I'd like to, first of all, officially give recognition to all the officers who put this together. There's a lot of work gone into this, and a lot of good work. So, as I said, commend them for what they've done with this. But in terms of if we can roll this into this next item, which is the local plan, the matters for consideration at the front of this next point is very incisive, because we are invited to review this information and look at it. This is not the first time this information has been before us. And it's worthwhile noting that this revolves around what's required as part of the Regulation 18, which is going out to consultation and establishing certain levels and facts that we can proceed with. Now, as a scrutiny committee, we're probably going to be called in several times over the local plan at different times of it. And because of the emotive nature of what this is, it's very easy to go off into a rabbit hole at some point and start discussing why is the fees here not level with that, and the housing policy on the green belt. What's before us at the moment is a issues and option consultation that took place, which is what we have in front of us. And do we have comments on that document? Now, this is where I needed your help and input, because on the one hand, I think all of us would like to pick upon issues around the local plan to say, why can't we discuss this? That's not right, or that's wrong, or whatever. But the process that we're following is one that should lead to a point whereby everybody around understands how we arrived there. We probably hear comments about the objectively assessed needs, which goes on to the number of housing. Yeah, facts and figures revolved around that are important and will be necessary, but not at this time. What's important at this time is that we have the recognition that we need to look at that. So what we're doing by this is putting down a roadmap of where we need to be going to achieve the next step. Now, I know for me personally, I know these are difficult. I sit here and listen to these things. I say, well, why can't you tell me the answer to this now? This is not the time to be asking those questions. What we're looking at is the document here, which is this correct? Has it been put together properly? Are there any issues with the issues and option document that we should be highlighting? Because our objective in the Scrutiny Committee is to hold the Cabinet to account. That is all we're here for, is to make sure that what the Cabinet gets is accurate. So we need to look at the things which could confuse them. So I know I've gone rambling on in different areas there, but if anybody would like to comment on what I've just said, I would be more than happy to listen to that, because I suspect all of us would like to gallop ahead and say, well, why don't we build up the streets in Langdon, and let's look at Wickford. Yep, that's all going to happen, but not at this time. So if anybody would like to comment on that, I'd be more than happy. Okay, thank you for that. So if we can then, we no need to vote on the last one, and we don't really need to vote or take any action on this next one at this point. But it is a hefty document, and as I said, it's emotive for various different reasons, but it is item agenda number 5, pages 49 to 265. That's almost like a dart score, isn't it? So, have we got a presentation? We can do that. Okay. So if you want to kick that off now, which is a slide presentation, which I believe all the members received during email, but without the actual voiceovers for this. So, are you doing this one, Thomas? No. Chris, you're doing. Right. Okay, Philip. Yeah.
Yes.
Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the consultation that we've just completed and we're reporting on now is called the Regulation 18 Issues and Options Consultation. It's the first stage of the preparation of a local plan. It's the first conversation we have, therefore, about the local plan issues with the residents of the borough. It's a high-level consultation which will help the council move forward on the new vision, strategic objectives, the key issues and the spatial strategy. The consultation informs residents about how we propose to develop the local plan, but at this stage it does not contain any policies or allocate any sites for development. So the next stage is also a Reg 18 stage, but it's the draft local plan stage. And at that stage, which is scheduled towards the end of this year, we do start to put forward draft policies and draft site allocations into that consultation document. The draft local plan is informed by the issues and options consultation that we have tonight, and also informed by the local plan evidence base which we're preparing at the current time. So residents will get fully involved in the draft local plan at that stage, and that will then feed into what we refer to as the Regulation 19 submission local plan, which is a version of the local plan we aim to submit to government. That will have the proposed policies and site allocations in that version, and that's scheduled to be consulted on at the end of 2025. So that's broadly the process. Sam's just going to talk about a few slides now.
So yeah, just to introduce this slide, some of you may have been at the member briefing session in September when we presented some of the initial findings using the raw data from the consultation. We then had another member briefing after that date, so just to ensure roundness and everybody's on the same page on this, just wanted to present these couple of slides to you to show you the demographic summary of who engaged with our consultation. So when we first presented to members, we had in that presentation all the respondents that came back to us on the consultation, and we had 720 of those. Now at that time we hadn't gone through the process of validating those responses, and what's required is a name and address of the people that are contributing to the consultation. Once we did that, obviously it changed the results slightly. So this slide just shows you that initial raw data, the 720, and you can see that we had good response rate from across all ages, but obviously higher for those that were in that mid-range of 45 to 74. We had similar responses from male, female, and we also had some in there that prefer not to say or added something else. And then across the disability and long-term health section, we again had representation from lots of different people that had different long-term health problems or disability. And what I said at the time was actually that was positive to have received response from across that whole range, because it means people were able to engage with the platform, and we wasn't excluding anybody or nobody was finding any particular issues with the platform. Fast forward to where we are now, we've done that process of looking at the data and validating those responses. And what it shows here is that 450 of those responses went through from residents. And what it also shows you is that doesn't really change that demographic profile too much. You can still see here that the biggest age group, the range of age group that came through was that 45 to 74. Equal across the sexes there, and again we've still got representation across all the different health problems and disability terms that we included in the consultation. So that was more of an assurance that even though we went through a validation process, the demographic profile is still very much the same. And then on this slide I'm just going to show you here, well, again, when we brought the raw data, gave you an overview of where the responses were coming from, and this is indicated by the size of the spots on the map. The left one is that raw data, and the right side is the current valid data. And what we've tried to do there is just to break it down a little bit further, just again so you can see where all the different responses were coming through from. And again, what it shows us is higher response rate from the Billericay and surrounding area there. It also shows us that when we looked at the first map, it's difficult to see exactly where those responses were coming from. But on the newest map, you can see actually we've got an even better kind of a spread of people responding from different areas across the borough. So positive on the whole there. And I'll hand back to Philip so he can go a little bit more into actually what we found out.
Thank you. Yes, so we covered the vision and strategic objectives. So we set out this paragraph is the proposed vision that we've got at the moment. I won't read it out to you, but what we found, or what we heard from residents, was that the responses were generally supportive of the proposed vision and the strategic objectives. Generally, there were three main themes arising. Firstly, protecting the environment. Secondly, delivery of infrastructure. And thirdly, there were opposing views between those that wanted to focus on delivering new homes and also those that wanted to preserve the green belt. And generally, protecting the environment and sustainable development should be new themes, in addition to the existing people, place and prosperity strategic themes. And lastly, the issue of tourism had limited support and should therefore form part of the economic and prosperity theme. On strategic matters and key issues, there were a number of views that the local plan time frame should actually be longer than the 15-year period we consulted on. So that would mean it would probably start at an earlier start date. Again, the importance of meeting housing needs was frequently mentioned, particularly by developers. Many responses supported the need to get a local plan progressed and adopted, particularly to avoid speculative development. As I've said, protecting the green belt was considered to be important, and the need for infrastructure was regularly mentioned as a strategic matter. There are a number of slides in the presentation you've received, and I don't propose to include those tonight, but we can jump to them if we get questions on specific topics. But what I will jump to is the next steps for the local plan. So we need to review the local development scheme. That's actually been asked for by the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities in the letter that Tom Ash referred to regarding intervention. So we're currently working with the Planning Advisory Service. We'll be completing that process by the 5th of March, and that will be supported by a programme and resource plan. And we also have a meeting set up on the 13th of February with the department to discuss progress on that. In terms of the local plan, as I said before, we're busy progressing various streams of evidence. This includes the urban capacity assessment, which will provide an up-to-date qualitative and quantitative assessment of the borough's urban potential to accommodate growth. We'll be using quite extensive use of GIS technology to do that. We'll also be commissioning updated evidence on housing need, and working with the 6 South Essex authorities to do that as well. We have a Greenbelt assessment, which is we're wrapping up at the moment, and we're wrapping up the retail evidence study at the moment, and 4 or 5 other bits of evidence that we aim to complete by roughly by August of this year. The key part of the draft local plan is to develop growth and spatial strategy options for the borough. This is likely to include low, medium and high growth scenarios, and it will use the standard methodology as the starting point for housing need. We do expect to be drawing on some consultancy support to help us drive this forward. Lastly, we are planning the delivery of infrastructure through considering the introduction of the community infrastructure levy. Again, consultancy support will be required to do this, and the purchase of new software is also likely to be required for that. I'll leave it there, but if you have any specific questions, we can go to the particular slides I mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Yes, Councillor Nixon.
Yes, I note that the housing and greenbelt areas were specifically answered or more often answered by developers, and were actually relating to specific areas of land as opposed to a general conversation around the needs of the town. I've actually read through this in quite a detailed way today. I'm also very concerned that when we were looking at the age ranges, we seem to have really missed those lower end age ranges. There has been something wrong with our consultation process that hasn't engaged those people. And I find that quite worrying, because they are actually the people that are going to be most affected by this plan. Unfortunately, by the time this sort of comes to full fruition, a number of us sitting around as members will unfortunately not be here, and not because we don't wish to be councillors anymore, but by matter of age, or we will be far too doddery to probably care about it. But it's a fact of life. We create these plans, and it's the people that are least affected by them that are making the decisions. for sort of 15 years, 20 years hence. And I'm very, very concerned about the fact that the people that are most involved have been the less engaged, and that has to be a failure on our part.
That is a good point, actually, and it's a point we actually were talking about this afternoon. So we're very lucky in planning because we have a number of apprentices at level 4 to 7 and level 7 that are local residents. They're all local, and that we're all moving them through the process of becoming young planners. So we were talking with them this afternoon, and we have tasked them with dealing with this issue. So we've tasked our young planners who are Basildon born and bred to look at this issue and then to work with Sam on actually how we engage them both now at the plan making stage, at the questions and issues, and then actually how we then deliver that through the local plan, and then actually how we then consult with them. The problem is they're very difficult. They're not the likers of questionnaires and things. So a lot of that, I think, is going to be intuitive and working alongside them to make sure the plan deals with issues, and we can show that through the evidence base how we deliver it, that there has been that interaction. So yeah, we had that conversation with them today. So that's our next step. So that will be delivered as part of our next steps in terms of moving the local plan forward.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to hear that. Do we have any apprentices, for instance, in our sort of public engagement departments? Do we know? Anyone?
Yes, we do. So again, we're going to try and, I mean, we've got what, 6, 7 of them. So we've got 7 young planners, which we're really lucky we've got them. But we're going to utilise them because obviously the planners, you fit into a box, don't you? And it's trying to get that box as big as we can get it. But then also to use them to go out to schools and look at. We were saying that probably one of the key areas to look at is 16, 17-year-olds, because they're the ones that haven't quite decided to go to university yet. They haven't made those commitments, and they're the ones we might actually be able to retain within Basildon as apprentices on level 4 to 7. So it is, that's quite a good opportunity for us to look at what their needs are and look at what the needs are for the local plan to address what they want. So yeah, we're going to work quite closely with that group and try and see how we can maintain and create an evidence base around what their needs are.
I think it's really important that we actually go younger than that as well. Yeah. I mean, getting those young people's views, it amazes me how aware our really young residents are of various issues, particularly on green issues, climate change and things like that.
In terms of your first question, the reason why there were so many responses from developers is the fact that they use issue and options position to quantify land they're trying to bring forward within the call for sites. So we do a call for sites process, which basically is bring out your land and let's see what you want to promote. And then in these issue and options consultations, they always provide further evidence. So that's why you see a lot of development in here. A lot of developers relating to the call for sites information. So it's just the way that it happens with local plan production. So yeah, it's given no extra weight. It's just the way they do it. And also it means we have to do an awful lot of tracking information as well. So we don't like them doing it, but they just do it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Malloy.
Thank you. You mentioned the community infrastructure levy, and I just wanted to know what that was. During your presentation.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, infrastructure is delivered through Section 106 agreements, which are part of the planning application process. But there is a separate process which is called the Community Infrastructure Levy. It's not currently operated by Basildon, but it is operated by a number of other authorities around the country. It's based more on a levy on most forms of development, but to introduce that we need to do a bit of separate evidence work with specialist consultants to look at issues around viability and the value of properties and that kind of thing, so that we can decide how much per square metre to charge on a community infrastructure levy. But we're looking at just starting that process now.
And who would be paying that levy?
It's paid by the developer. Yeah, it's a contribution towards infrastructure. Yeah.
The difference between planning obligations under 106 agreements and SIL is that SIL goes down to each individual new dwelling. So if you've got a developer that takes out one dwelling and puts two in, he pays SIL on the increased size of the first dwelling he's removed, and also then the new dwelling itself as well. So what it brings infrastructure contributions down to the bottom line. So every new building you have and every new square metre of commercial space has got a requirement to pay some form of levy against it. So it is more effective in authorities where you're building small number of units, because they all have to pay, and it's it can be, because it's based on the size of the property, it can be a considerable amount of money.
Okay.
Thanks, Chairman. I think just picking up on Councillor Karen Neeson's point, particularly on page 246, it's got response to A2 is that their primary observation is that the document's very technical. I think quite a lot of what I heard from constituents and residents generally was that it was too complicated to engage with, and they felt that it was sort of a barrier to engagement. And I think one of the points that I think it's worth just pointing out, I don't know if you have that information to hand, I've got to go back through. Do you know how many responses we had for the Basildon Town Centre consultation? From 2021? Yeah, no, that's fine. Because looking at it, at least on the slides, it said there were 720 respondents to this consultation. So I was just wondering what the difference is between the consultation we did, because I was on that committee when we actually oversee the Basildon Town Centre consultation, and I'm just wondering, it's roughly 2 years apart. So in terms of the number that we had before 2 years ago to now, because it was generally applicable to the borough, if I recall the heat map properly. So I'm just wondering what, in terms of what's been mentioned in the page I referenced, what lessons had we not learnt from before to mean the drop was so significant?
I think it's very difficult to compare consultations in the same way that you have done in that respect, because it's different context, different questions, different points in the process. So with this particular consultation, it's at a very, very early stage. So a lot of the things you're asking are very strategic, which at the best is quite difficult for most people to kind of visualise what we're talking about, in the sense of it's not saying we have this piece of land and this is what we're thinking about doing to it. It's not that. It's much more what do you think and feel about, much broader issues. And because of that reason, people can often look at it and think, okay, I'll sit on the fence, I'll wait. We know that lots of people signed up to the Commonplace platform, over 1,700 people. So they've gone on and looked at it and found out the information, but may at that point have chosen not to put their views forward at this point. So I'd be cautious about comparing, unless you're comparing like for like. You will get a different response rate. But what I will also say is that 720 responses to a consultation is good. It's a good response rate for this level of consultation. Now, and what you will see going forward is that as proposals and information becomes much more refined, so it's kind of like a funnel process, and as those things become more specific and people can understand and engage in them more easily, you will see an increase in the number of people that decide to step forward and put forward their views. But I'll just have a look on here and see if I can find that number for you.
it was just the way I looked at it is that if we want maximum engagement, thanks. It was just if we're looking for maximum engagement, it's not so much comparing it like for like, but for an issue so important, for the number to drop, I perhaps am comparing apples and pears, but in the same sense, it's the same outcome that this town centre consultation will probably slot into our local plan at some point in the future, because that's why we did a regeneration strategy, not whatever it was before. So I just think if we're trying to get as many people involved, it has to be as simple as possible, because some people may say, I may not like the options you presented me, and they would rather just write a letter or something like that.
The figure was 2,948 on the town centre specifically on that consultation. But as I said, that consultation was much more specific, whereas the local plan at this stage is much wider than that. So again, I would be cautious about comparing because they're not like for like. But as I said, 750 is a reasonably good response rate to a consultation.
I think we'll get a lot more responses to the next stage because we'll be showing the sites that we're proposing, actual sites and actual policies. So I suspect we'll get a very good response rate when we get to the next Reg 18 stage.
I think it's I mean, looking at having done plans previously, I mean, this is normal. The normal thing. You start off quite low, which actually, I mean, I've done plans when we've had about 20 responses at this stage, so actually we've done quite well. I mean, you are looking at, you will end up with thousands at the next stage when you start looking at allocations. And the best thing about the system that we've now procured, commonplace, is the fact that people can just go on and deal with one item. So if it's a resident that's interested in just a particular site, they can go on and they only have to answer that one question. So again, it's not making they haven't got to fill the whole document in. So they can answer, they can fill in one area of it, and that's it. So again, it's probably more accessible to people than other, and that's why I think we had so many for the town centre one, because that was quite simple, and I think that I mean, the actual platform is very good to use. I think, and the best thing, and we'll make it very clear that if you only want to answer one area, that's all you have to do. And it was made very clear last time, and this time will be the same. Because I think that, you know, if residents want to talk about Wickford or Billericay or Basildon itself, then that's all they have to deal with. So we're not. In fact, we were quite intrigued by the number we had, and also the fact we've got all those people who signed up are on our database now that we can go straight back to in terms of any new engagement. So really, it's already given us quite a large set of people to go back out to. So we don't feel as if it's been it's a very good consultation for us, a very good consultation for a level of consultation for local plan. The next one we'll have thousands, you know. So I'm not worried about that, and that's the one that we want the lots of people coming back to is the next one.
My question has to do with the response to the consultation, because we had that map that showed us that a lot more people responded in places like Billericay and probably less, I'm not sure in what other areas. And then I'm reading a comment here that said unrealistic to expect residents to comment on such a large document. From what I'm reading here, it doesn't seem as if the consultation, I'm not sure how accessible it was to all residents across the board, and were there other ways to consult or engage with other local residents, like in areas where there wasn't that much of a response, like having focus groups. The importance of this is that it's a document that is going to inform the whole of the area, and if it's heavy, if the responses to it is heavy to one side of the local area, it's not giving a true reflection of what the residents really would want. So it might just be the way that they were consulted, and it might be that we might need to look at were there, apart from, was it a form, what went out, and were there a variety of modes for people to respond to? The other thing I noticed was a lot of the elderly. That not many of them responded, and there are ways to engage them from the data I saw. But there are ways to engage them better, because like we were talking about the younger generation, it's important that as we're planning for the area, that we're taking into consideration all ages.
One thing. I mean, what we can bring back to scrutiny to deal with the concerns that are raised by quite a few of the councillors is that obviously a consultation plan is being put together now. What we can bring back to scrutiny is that consultation plan. So that will then look at that. They can then look at how we attend. We can bring it back early as well. So that consultation plan can be reviewed by scrutiny following discussions with obviously the member group that will be looking at it. Every avenue we've looked at properly, and any challenges put to that communication plan early doors. Because I mean, Sam can deal with a lot of the points how we've dealt with them, so Sam can deal with that. But I think that's probably a pretty good option, is that we bring that back as early as we can to you, for you can have a look at and see how we've addressed your concerns from tonight, and then also you can then maybe give us some further ideas that we might not have thought out to deal with that at that point.
Yeah, I have a feeling that at some point the issue which will grow will be the confidence in the data again, because things are moving very, very rapidly at the moment globally. But if we look at just Basildon for the moment and look at it in terms of both numbers but also the demographics, really, of the population, it's literally changing daily. So if you are taking any information based upon hard data that was collected, such as, you know, we want to see a lot more green belt, that may have been the case at that time. But because this consultation is quite lengthy, and I was glad to see that that had been highlighted, that in fact that could be a concern, that it is over such a long period of time. But this in itself raises the question, well, what is an acceptable period of time? How long do we need to consult for before we change something? I don't know the answer to that one, but what I do know is that just looking around in any town within Basildon, not picking anyone at all, literally in the last 2 years, things have changed in almost every town within the borough. Now, if that happens in 2 years, considering all the things that are going on around us at the moment, what's going to happen in the next 2 years? Because in the next 2 years, we still won't be putting this whole document to rest. This will still be live. And yet we need to be making decisions along that line. And that does concern me. So if you have any information which you might think is going to help console us on that one, I certainly would be very, very pleased to see it. Because this, I said it right in the beginning, this is a very, very, probably the most important thing that any of us will be doing in our political or just our ordinary life. So, you know, let's try to get it right first time if we can. I think somebody else wanted to come in.
Sitting here and listening to the comments, I understand there's a lot of work gone into the plan, but I just want to say that over 40 years ago, when I moved to Basildon, I came from Romford, and I came on the London Borough's exchange scheme because where I moved to on the Cyprix estate there were empty houses, 3-bedroom houses going empty, which Basildon Development Corporation wanted to fill and get rents from. But when I moved in, it was a community. And I could walk from my house to the shopping centre at Langdon. I could walk over to the doctor's surgery and the library, and the banks and everything were there, and we had a community. Unfortunately, that seems to have gone by the way. But one of the things I notice in my job as a nurse, working in various areas of Essex, in Southend, there are communities which are for retired people only. They are houses, they weren't expensive when they were built, they were kept at a reasonable rate, and pensioners could move in the safety that it was a gated area. But then they've got the facilities to get the bus services and everything to get backwards and forwards to Southend, get to the doctor's surgeries and do all the things they need to do, like pensioners do, without driving. All I see with what is being built around this area is vast swathes of houses which are not really affordable for people in Basildon.
No.
And the main thing, and this is a real gripe of mine, and I'll give you for instance, 750 houses on Wesley Green are only just getting the foundations for the school built. That is outrageous. There is not a doctor's surgery there. There's nothing. But previously to those 750 houses being built, we had a thriving equestrian centre, which was well known all over Essex. And that's where the kids of Basildon went to learn to ride. And there was competition and everything. And I just find it absolutely amazing that there's now 700, and it was advertised as 750 aspirational houses. Who in Basildon can afford houses £800,000 and £900,000 a piece? They can't. They absolutely can't. It's crazy. If you want to get a response to some of these consultations, you've got to give it to the people of Basildon. I mean, as I say, years ago when I moved down, you had swathes of council houses. And yes, I know we've had the right to buy and it's all been sold off. And some people have made a very nice profit. But we need to look after our kids that were born and brought up in Basildon. Yeah. They've got nowhere to go. And to be honest, I will have a gripe about the youth zone. It was stopped. Where do the kids go? They go out and cause trouble. As far as I'm concerned, we've got to think of our Basildon community, not just the rich people coming to buy houses from inside. And if people want to build on Greenbelt, yes, it's up to us to object. But I seriously think we should think of our Basildon community before we start thinking about everything else. We've got a lot of businesses in Langdon. We've got a veterinary centre in there that's absolutely massive, dealing with cancer in animals. We've got what was the gin factory. That's something else now. There are plenty of places, little units, all around that road on that industrial area. We've got Ford's at Dunton. You know, what I don't understand is Langdon seems to have been forgotten. It was an absolute brilliant shopping centre. And yes, it was dilapidated and it did need changing. But it's just taking too long. Nothing is happening. You know, I've been to the meetings that they've held. There was 2 meetings and I've been to them. And they haven't told me anything different. I'm still looking at concrete pillars when I drive by. It's getting an absolute disgrace. And the thing is, the residents are getting angry over it. They really are getting angry over it. And then you've got the 2 big estates down there that will feed that shopping centre. You've got 5 links. I walked through there a few weeks ago. It's a disgrace. And as for Langdon Hills Estate, I get so many complaints because the repairs just aren't done. We've got to look after our own residents instead of. It's all very well thinking about these big projects, but we've got to think about what we've already got. That's it. I've said my bit.
It's all right. Good comments. The only thing I'll add to it in any shape or form is the fact of, yes, action needs to take place now instead of looking at big projects. The problem with that is if you don't look at the big projects, we don't go anywhere. We have to plan ahead in order to move there to arrive at a place we want to be at. And until you actually start planning that, we're never going to get there. All we end up with is a stagnation of where we are at the moment. What I think you're suggesting, is that we need to be aware of what is around us. What are the good parts? What are the bad parts? Pick out of that what we want to do and how we want to do it. And that really is what we're trying to achieve here, is to identify what is worth pursuing and what is worth chucking. And that's the point of this particular issues. What are the issues of the borough and what options have we got to take that? Now, until this document came together, what we were relying upon was people saying, well, actually, I'm very, very happy with the whole area. I've got no issues with it. On the other side, you've got somebody like yourself who's living that life all day long, and you're saying, I'm surrounded by issues which are not being addressed. Now, the secret is, and this is where our officer's going to come into it, and as I said, I'm nothing but praise for them, really, for putting this together at this point. But the job now is to somehow get the data from what we have, get that data all together, and then make some meaningful statement from it. Find out exactly what is the situation, find out what can be done, and then once you've got that, which is what this document's for, we can then move on to the next phase and say, right, okay, nothing's perfect, but this is what we think we should be doing.
When I first joined the council in 21, I sat in the full council meeting, when Andrew Baggott said that if people were coming, developers wanted to build in Basildon, they had to come in with their plan plus the infrastructure. And the point I'm making is up on Wesley Green, that hasn't happened. That hasn't happened. And now there's talk of further building up there on another piece of ground, which is Greenbelt. How far does it go before, when people come to planning, they have to put in the infrastructure first? You can't have 750 houses up there with no doctor's surgery, because the nearest doctor's surgery is either down the Nares at Nethermain or Langdon Health Centre, which is vastly oversubscribed. And my whole argument is, and having been through various serious medical treatments since before Christmas, I've had murders trying to get an appointment. The doctors at Langdon Health Centre, fantastic, but try getting an appointment. Try getting an appointment at the hospital with the cardiologist. I've had to wait 2.5 months. I'm saying, you can't put all these properties in and have all these influx of people if the infrastructure isn't there. And it's heartbreaking when you've just got to wait and not know whether you're actually going to make it. That's the difficulty. And for quite a simple change. But that's what I'm saying, is that I think the people of Basildon deserve better. And a lot of them, and I find this out when I go delivering my newsletter, these people don't go on the internet. They can't be doing with it. No. They absolutely don't know where to start. They're so frightened of scammers, they wouldn't know what to start. I looked at the consultation, and to be honest, I got bored with it. Now, I suppose I used to be classed as a techie. I'll plough through it. You know, I kept going, and I thought, oh, for God's sake, this is so boring. The point is, not everybody's going to do it. I would rather read about it. I would rather go to a meeting about it and see what is happening. But to plough through it...
Can I just suggest, if you turn the microphone up, can I just suggest, though, the one problem you've got is one we've identified already, is that lots of people would have done exactly what you said, where they start to read it and they say, I just can't be bothered. Okay, what you end up with then, unfortunately, are the people who do want to say something, leading everybody else, whether the plan is right or wrong. And it's because they've decided to speak up and others haven't. Now, all of a sudden, you've got a plan of action there to let's all build high-rise blocks right across the whole borough. Who said that? Well, they did. We got 10,000 people here who've all said that's what we want. No, these lot, yeah, but they didn't say anything. Now, this is the problem we're faced with. We're trying with this, and this is only the first step. If you think this is good, you wait until the other steps come along. This is part of a process. I know this is part of a process, but we need to go through the process so that we get to an answer which, as I said, won't be perfect no matter what you do, but at least it will be somewhere in the right direction. Can I just move on to, I know, Councillor Kira.
Susanna's fine.
And yeah, Susanna. I know you've been chomping at the bit.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, I'm kind of echoing what Val's saying here in a lot of ways. But I also feel that the trouble is when we develop these local plans, I mean, we had a local plan, it didn't fit with the change of political parties, so we ditched the local plan. When we write local plans, there is an element quite often of political leaning one way or the other. I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying it's bad. And as the officers are writing up questions, they're invariably having to write them up to fit the colour of whoever's in administration at the time. What we don't then get is the opportunity, or residents don't get, is the opportunity to sort of just say, just as you say, write letters saying, well, this is actually how I feel about the area I live in, about how many times I go into Basildon, how many times I might go over to Billericay, do I ever go to Wickford? We don't ask those sort of questions about how people are moving around the borough and what they want from their communities. And I know that, you know, it may be that we come down to that, but unless you get them engaged at this stage, it then becomes, as you say, we then get the people that shout the loudest will end up with what they want in the local plan, irregardless of whether or not it's actually good for the borough. And I think that's something that we need to really, really look at and just change the way that we actually involve people. You know, a lot of my background's public involvement, and you cannot work on the assumption that people will come to you.
Can I just ask a question? Then, in that case, I mean, this may be completely wrong, and I welcome any input there from any of the officers. If this is an issue, would it help at all to have another presentation at some point on the process that went through to discover why the questions came out as they did? Would that help?
Sorry, Councillor Holloman, can I just, so the questions were all brought to this session, so you looked at every single question. So I mean, as Sam just said, we can't go backwards. I'm not putting you under pressure here. We will do what we can do, and we'll bring a communications plan back to you. We'll bring the plan back to you. You can have a look at the plan. The plan's going to go through a whole new process of member involvement and full member briefings. So the plan will be very much a brought together plan. We have not got much time. We have got to have a plan ready for consultation by the end of this year. So, we are under a lot of pressure from central government to get a plan, because if we don't do it ourselves, government will now step in and do it for us. So we've got to move a plan forward that and it ensures that we bring everyone along with it. The delight, and I think it is a delight now, of the plan process is that there are now quite quick reviews of those plans. So whereas before you wrote a plan and it was a plan that lasted for 15 years, and by the end of it, it was a quite old, haggard plan that didn't do much. Now you are on 4 and 5 year reviews, and also some inspectors will adopt your plan, find it sound, and will say that actually I've adopted it, I found it sound, you go and adopt it now as a council, but I'm putting you back into review straight away because I think there's a slight flaw in it. That's what happened to Brentwood. The inspector accepted their plan, he found it sound, but he said that you can adopt this, but I'm putting you straight back into review because this is in the plan I don't like. So really, actually, if we have got to get a plan together, we've got to make sure that we can bring residents along with us. Certain issues that you're talking about the community is a wider discussion than just the plan making. And actually, I do disagree on infrastructure. All the schemes that we have worked on since the plan was withdrawn, and they've all been through the appeal process, every single inspector that's dealt with those has remarked on the amount of infrastructure we have sought for the council in terms of delivering those schemes. The problems we get are like with the NHS. The NHS, to create a new surgery, we need between 8 and 10,000 new people to create a new surgery. So 750 homes will not generate enough capacity for the NHS and a GP surgery to come forward. That doesn't happen. And as far as the evidence that we've got from the NHS to date shows that there is still capacity in the GP surgeries across the borough to cover growth. In terms of schools, if the borough doesn't grow in the next few years, in fact, the school toll rolls we've got at the moment are actually declining. So actually, there will be additional school places soon. So I think we've got to be careful when we talk about infrastructure, because the evidence is very clearly there about infrastructure. And we do work very hard with all our partners to make sure we get infrastructure. And the issues with whether schools are built is not an issue for this council, because this council sought that school site, the funding for that school. The school wasn't built because the county didn't need the school until I think it's needed in 2025. So that, again, they can only open schools when they need the schools. They will not open schools and then bid them to be empty. So you have to look at the infrastructure that we get in and when it's actually delivered. So on all the sites that we've worked on in the past 2 or 3 years, they've all had adequate infrastructure that has been requested by the relevant partners that can seek contributions for infrastructure. So I think, and the big picture stuff that you're talking about is responsibility of the NHS, and the NHS cannot seek funding just to for situations normal. They can only seek funding when they can prove there is going to be a requirement for a new project to seek that funding, and so they can't just randomly ask for money. So it's not quite as easy as everyone thinks, and we work very hard as a local planning authority to seek the contributions that we seek, and they are a significant amount of contributions.
Thank you for that one. Thomas.
I just want to echo the point that Christy and the team have said. It's very frustrating, members. I do completely understand where you're coming from, particularly any member of the public. But Christine has very clearly outlined there some of the challenges that are faced. You've got a system that perhaps doesn't reflect, the needs and requirements from the public. But these are the two salient points. Number one, government is pushing us here at Basildon, hence that letter that I made reference to and being mentioned, to speed up that process. We don't have the luxury of time, and I think, as Christine has already illuminated, you'll find even more responses coming through as we progress into the timetable. And the whole essence of it is to try and progress that as quickly as possible, not to ignore, but just to try and get through, because it's a labyrinth of an exercise. And the second thing is, very eloquently highlighted by Christine, is it's not through the lack of engagement or with multiple public sector bodies such as health and education. In fact, as an observation from many of the planning applications I've seen, those requests are made, but the actual figures supplied by those bodies don't correlate. So in other words, what contribution should be given towards a GP service or a school? And they're minor. And I think the very point that Christian has made about the health authority in particular cannot be seen to secure additional funding where it's not relevant or supported. So it can't be used as an additional funding source. I think that's the point that's being made here. It has to be very clearly secured through the regulations that they have to work within. So I think there's frustrations that you can see picking up, but this is why the government is very keen to try and address this through the planning system, but it's not perfect. I think that's the point I'm just trying to make, Chair.
Thank you for that.
To me, we're kind of missing the one major issue here, which is getting the views of our public on board. And I feel that we don't have the expertise within the building in any way, shape or form. Otherwise, we'd be getting these consultations right. Now, I'm not knocking what the officers are doing. It's, you're planning officers, you're not experts in communication and doing surveys and things. To me, especially because we are so limited on time and we need to get this sorted, is that we need to maybe engage a company that does have that expertise.
I think we have
Sorry.
done that several times.
Well, I don't think we're quite getting the right type of people then. I can think of companies that the London Borough have used that are excellent.
I think there might be one answer coming up now. Yeah. Yes.
Sorry, just to clarify that for this particular project, the planning service has asked myself to work with the team. I work in policy. I'm the consultation engagement lead for the authority. So I do have a significant experience in consultation and engagement, and I'm applying that and sharing that with the planning team. So just to highlight that in case there was some confusion as to roles in the team. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a bit confused by this discussion. The reason I'm confused is that the draft of this consultation came to this committee, I think, 3 times. 3 times members had the ability to influence that consultation. So to sit here now and complain that we didn't get it right, that we complain that we didn't get the right demographic of people is a bit rich, to be honest. And we actually say here on page 50 that we have 7,630 contacts that have registered interest in the development of a new local plan. And we've used the website, press releases, adverts in local publications and social media. We've included placing consultation documents on deposit at the council's customer service centre, organised stakeholder presentations, resident forums, Q&A sessions for residents, developers, statutory consultees and drop-in sessions. Frankly, I think we've done a pretty good job of getting the message out there. You cannot force residents to actually respond. Thank you.
One question I was going to ask Christine, realistically, without putting yourself into a corner. What is the time frame for this part of it which we must hit?
I mean, sorry to continue. As far as we're concerned, as a local planning authority, we've reviewed all the responses, and that's been a lot of work. And in this document you've got before us, we've set out for all the key issues our next steps, and that's the whole idea of an issue and options document. It allows us to look at what people say, to put that into some context, and then to set out what we're going to do. And that's what this document does at page 51 onwards. And so what we've taken from that document are the comments, and we will be using the comments where it says next steps. We will be using that to drive the next part of the local plan. So what it is, it's a sift basically. People say things, then you said we did. So they said this, we're going to do that. That's what this document's about. It's about trying to tease out. We've got experience in plan making, but as members did say, that our experience is from plan making across the country. What we've looked at now is what the residents are saying about our questions and how they responded to them, and then our next steps. Those next steps will be what drives our next evidence bases, the next how we start to formulate policies, how we start to look at land coming forward for allocations. So that's what this is about. All this is about is you said we did. You said this, we've done that. And that's what this is about. So, and what I've taken from this is that we will bring, as we did do with the last document, we will bring that consultation plan back to you as early as we can. And Sam will work on that. We'll bring that back to a very early meeting. You can then scrutinise that communications plan. If you want to add anything to that, you can offer that up, and we can then go back and look how feasible that is. Again, the regulations for, the problem is we're regulatory. I mean, this is, you have to do things what the regulations say you do. If you don't do it correctly, then there's a challenge what we've done, so we have to do certain things. But we will bring that back to you at the earliest point once that's been through a series of further member briefings. Because I think that's obviously, what I've taken from that's the key. And then also any topic areas that we think need some further investigation, after they've been through our relevant member groups and all member briefings, they will come back here, and again you can flesh out some discussions around that. But a lot of the topics you've been talking about, like community facilities and older people, they're key things that we've already got in our mind. We've got issues around numbers of older people accommodation, because we've got a large number of applications actually for that type of accommodation at the moment, and our current housing work shows there's no need for it. So that's where we need to refresh our housing needs survey and also our older persons work. So we know we've got a clear idea where the challenges are, but it's nice to see what the residents have said and how we can formulate that, and also what members are saying tonight actually is some of the issues that we've already got our minds on. Okay,
thank you for that. I'd like to bring this to a close, because we could go on this one. My feeling is that it would be very, very difficult to go against what Councillor Moore brought up just a few minutes ago, because this is about the fourth time, or it will be the fourth time, this has come before this committee. Now, one of the problems that I can see with that is that we have had an influx of people backwards and forwards on the committee. So everybody that joins it for the first time joins it with their perception of what has gone on and what needs to go on, and they disappear after the next one. So we have to start all over again. Pretty much every single point that you've brought up this evening, I can understand, and I sympathise with all those, and a lot of them, if truth is known, I'm totally supportive of. In reality, I think we have to look at what we're faced with, which is a document which has been before this committee several times. Comments were made and they were acted upon. So it's not a case that they were just totally ignored. They have been acted upon. And we've arrived at the stage now where we have a document which is pretty much fit to go, bar a few tweaks. And I think at this stage, to throw it on the fire would just be completely incomprehensible. So, like a lot of these situations, my recommendation would be to members is that we give our blessing to this at this point as it stands. There is more information and detail to come through and forward, which again we will then look at that and review that on what it is at the time. But I think it would need something seismographic, whatever starts with the word size. It would be that thing that needs to happen to simply say, no, can't do it. We don't have to vote on this, by the way, so there's no vote on it. But if we were voting on it, my personal vote would be that we accept this as it is. So unless we've got any real contention, I think we should buy all the officers a bottle of champagne for the work they've done, thank them profusely, and say you can still do better next time. But as it stands, it's still pretty good, and leave it there. Yes? Good. They've got a few nods. David, you're not nodding? No. Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. I can now reveal to the officers that we planned all this before, just to get you upset and to get you on your edge. Right, can we move on to the next and last agenda? Because I know that Don has got some people he wants to see later. Item agenda number 6, which is the work programme. Does anybody think we haven't got enough work to do at the moment? Right. So do we need to add any more?
So what we will do is what Christine was talking about, add that item
Yes,
to the work
yes.
programme for the future.
Yes, definitely. Okay, if that's the case, can I thank everybody for a very, very informative and lively meeting. And for me, it's been a pleasure. And I hope to see you all again.